listening to Rootbound, a podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside.
Did you just hear that crunch? That's the sound of autumn leaves, brought to you by Deciduous Trees, the sponsor for this episode of Rootbound. It's not fall without deciduous trees.
The performance of the U.S. economy over the past year has been quite favorable. Real GDP growth picked up to more than 3% over the 4 quarters of 1998. In closing, I would like to announce that oak leaves will replace the dollar as our accepted form of currency. And therefore, I expect an end to the welfare state by mid-fall.
I'm a bit of a leaf peeper.
What the fall leaves are you talking about, Pumpkin?
Just butt out of this, Thomas. Go fidget with your foliage.
It's called competitive leaf raking, and it's a real sport.
Competitive leaf raking?
And it's not just raking leaves. It's raking leaves against a stopwatch while also wearing intricately knit sweaters.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Rootbound. I'm the host of the show, and my name is Steve. And normally on Rootbound, I invite a guest who joins me on the show to share with us all about a plant that means something to them, and I share with the guest about a plant that means something to me, and through this process we can all learn more about plants and learn more about each other. But in case you haven't guessed it already, this is one of those special season episodes where we talk about a season and plants in general, and this season is fall. Now, I'm currently sitting in a hotel room in Wisconsin. I really planned to have this episode recorded on a hike nearby, but it was raining, and I guess that's what happens in the fall, but that's why I am recording the intro in a hotel room. But I did have a nice conversation at a restaurant with some friends about fall, and in particular, fall leaves. So let's now magically transport to this restaurant. You'll hear the ambient sounds. I left in lots of pauses. This is a pretty verite episode. I left in pauses where the server was coming by and giving us stuff. But I thought it was entertaining, at least to me. So I hope it is to you. And yeah, let's give it a listen. Hey everybody, this is Steve here, host of the show Rootbound. You probably know that. And this is the special fall episode of the show where we talk about plants and fall in general. And I'm here at a table at a restaurant. We're actually in Kohler, Wisconsin, which is kind of a random place to be, but that's where we are. And I'm sitting at the table with, as normal on these episodes, my wife Karla. Say hi.
Hello.
Also, we have Tish over here.
Hello.
And Kendall.
Hello.
And yeah, we're going to talk about fall and plants in general. I have a few things to talk about. One, we're in a restaurant. I planned... Tish and Kendall don't know this. I really wanted to do this. We were going to go on a hike yesterday. This place called Lions Den Gorge Park that we heard about, and we were going to go on a hike, and I was going to record this episode outside and look at fall plants. But it is raining, which is, I think, a pretty fall thing. Oh, audience also might be able to hear our little kid making some sounds in the background, so that's what that is. Lots of background sounds, which is normal on these season episodes. So yeah, I think... rain is quite common in the fall, and I was I guess it's one of those things that's maybe kind of obvious, but it's why is it rainy in the fall? And there's apparently a ton of reasons, but the main one is just that temperature change causes, it's more, condensation happens easier when it starts to get cooler, and that's also why I think why it's more drizzly often than in the summer, because in the summer when it rains, it's got to overcome the heat to condense, and so then you get these massive amounts of water that are pouring out, but in the fall, it's starting to drizzle more because it's getting cooler. So that's the first thing I have to say about fall, and that has to do with plants because plants love rain.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone wants to jump in with anything about plants and fall, feel free. But I have a couple interesting. I'm going to focus this. We've done a couple.
I want to listen to Tish's story that she was telling earlier.
Oh yeah, what was that about?
The leaves?
Yeah, the leaves.
Or the hornet's nest?
Let's start with the leaves, because that's going to be my theme on this episode is leaves. I'm going to talk a lot about leaves. Yeah.
Sure. So we know a thing or two about leaves. So, like most millennials, Kendall and I bought our house in June of 2020. And we were previously living in New York City, so we've quickly learned a lot about living in the burbs, living in a house, an old house, and having lots of trees and leaves nearby. So this is now our third fall as homeowners. And I think one thing that we've learned is that with leaves come ticks, especially where we are in Westchester County, just north of New York City. So we have kind of a big yard, and a lot of deer kind of come through our area. And so with deer, they carry ticks, and these ticks find themselves kind of attached to the leaves. And we have a dog, and our dog, his name is Hudson. Hudson loves to jump in the leaves and walk through the leaves. And so the ticks find themselves attached to our dog. Really any given day during the fall, we could pull, just 5 to 6 on average ticks off Hudson, even just from him just going outside briefly.
Wow.
And so it's definitely something that's always top of mind. I think Kendall and I also make sure to always check ourselves for ticks. Anytime that we're outside, we go on a hike, or, we come inside, always wear high socks, long pants, long shirts. We found them kind of around our necks, like we found them on our ankles, on our legs. So it's definitely always something to be super, super cautious of.
That's super interesting. We talked about ticks on the summer episode because we were up in the Catskills, and there's a lot of issues. And I always think of ticks as like a summer thing. I never actually thought about them as a fall thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think maybe in the summer in the Catskills, just because...
Yes, right here.
And then here's a little plate. Oh, lovely, thank you.
She's got 2.
Maybe, yeah. Just chew it away, huh? Our fingers delicious today. Enjoy your donuts.
Yeah, excuse that small interruption. We just got delivered some warm beer donuts, and the server decided to declare how cute our baby is, which is true.
But yeah, I mean, I would say in the Catskills during the summer, I could see that just because there are still like a ton of deer in that area, wildlife in general. There's still tons of, leaves on the ground from, previous falls, right? Mm-hmm. So I could see that. I think in our area, it's still a light concern during the summer, but I'd say I think tick season is primarily spring through fall, with fall being kind of the peak.
Interesting. I never thought about the facts of leaves. That actually leads into something. Well, I'll talk about this later. I have something that you just provided some clarity on something I want to talk about later, which is interesting. I'll come back to it though. Do you have any commentary on the ticks, Kendall? And the leaves? This way, yeah.
On the ticks. Oh, what?
There you go.
Yes. The ticks are dangerous. I had my first tick experience just a few weeks ago. I was about to take a shower and noticed there was a tick on my back, and it's a really unsettling experience.
So, have you seen them in the leaves, or do you only see them when they end up on the dog?
I've never seen them on the leaves. I've only seen them end up on the dogs and on my back 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
so small.
it's amazing how. I mean, I think we talked a little bit in the last episode, but yeah, they have these 3 different phases, and they require a blood meal between each. And so the big ones you always see in pictures are just the last stage. That first stage is really tiny. There's a picture going around the internet that shows a poppy seed muffin that also has ticks on it. Oh, no. And someone's like, can you see the ticks versus the poppy seeds? And it's tricky.
Yeah, it was about the size of the lead on the edge of a pencil. I would say very small.
Yeesh. Yeah. I'm glad. Well, we do have ticks where we are, but we avoid them. I didn't know about the leaf part. That is an interesting thing. That they, I guess, makes sense though. Yeah. Good place to hide.
I'm never going outside again.
I'd say the other thing that as new homeowners we've experienced with leaves, at least in our town, is that they come twice a season, I think, and they suck up all the leaves and kind of turn into mulch and compost. But I grew up in Maryland, and I don't think our local towns or counties did that. I think you had to bag them, and I think maybe you could take them somewhere after they were bagged. But it's nice that kind of where we are, you just have to get them into a pile near the street, and then they take care of it.
But at the same token, since it's only twice a month, it's a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole with the leaves, as one neighbor will blow all the leaves down to the street, and then the leaves will then subsequently blow down onto your yard. And because we live on a hill, we then sometimes also blow the leaves further down the hill into another open area. So it's just a continuous game of like, where do the leaves actually go?
Yeah.
Where do they actually end up?
So that actually leads me to what I was thinking about leaves. One of the things I was thinking about leaves. Okay, so I was just thinking about why do we rake leaves? You know, and maybe if you're trying to get rid of the homes for ticks, I think that is a valid excuse. But I was trying to wonder, I was like, it's kind of a weird thing, and there's actually this movement now, and actually USDA and EPA and everyone there's this movement to leave the leaves, because they are, I guess we've established, they are a great habitat, in this case for ticks, but they're habitat for lots of other creatures. Lots of insects and reptiles lay their eggs in fall leaves. Birds use leaves for making nests. They're really a key, and also, they're normally gone by pretty early in the spring. They do a good job of breaking down. And I couldn't find anything that was. There's actually a really good article which I'll link in the show notes on Atlas Obscura that's all about the history of the rake, which is pretty interesting. It was a really interesting article, but it didn't really get into the fact of like why is like raking and bagging leaves like a really common thing, and I think it's particularly an American thing. But what I think it is it comes from the rise of the American lawn. And then if you get leaves on your lawn, leaves have a tendency to smother, particularly those lawn species of grass. So I think it became the American obsession with the lawn became the American obsession with raking the leaves, which is pretty interesting.
Interesting, yeah. To that end, we've had in our town. So we live in the village of Pleasantville, which is in Westchester County. Our town has recently banned, gas-powered leaf blowers.
Yeah.
Which brings like another dimension to this.
It is such a bizarre thing that like there's these things that really you could just leave on the ground, and now we've developed technology that uses fossil fuels to like move them.
Yeah.
It is kind of a weird system that we created.
But I would say like where we are, because there are so many trees, like, it just wouldn't be feasible to leave all of the leaves on the ground. Like, besides, like, obviously people caring about having their lawns and having grass.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, after all of the leaves fall off the tree, like, we're talking, like, 6 inches deep plus of leaves across our whole yard. And it just, you can't even, like, walk through it. It's so deep.
The method that is suggested by USDA and a lot of groups is to just run your lawnmower over them, and they chop them up, and then they go away really quickly, pretty darn quickly. But yeah, there are probably situations where you do need to manage the physical amount of them. But what is even more bizarre is this system now. Certain places where they suck them up and then the city composts them. That's like super cool. The county I live in does that. But there is this really major issue where people bag leaves in non-biodegradable bags, and then they get sent to the landfill. And that is like a thing that happens. And so I have this mind-blowing stat, which is in 2018, landfills in the U.S. received approximately 10.5 million tons of yard trimmings, and that compromises 7.2% of all municipal solid waste in landfills.
Wow.
And when you put leaves in a landfill, they can't properly decompose, and they end up decomposing in a way that generates methane, which is a contributor to climate change. So, and that's just people like scraping stuff off their lawns and putting them in like plastic bags. It's very strange.
Wow. So mow the leaves, people.
Yeah. Or hopefully there's a system that you can municipal compost, if you can get your city to do that, or if you have your own compost bin, you can put them in there. But I was blown away by that stat. 7.2% of landfills is just leaves.
Wow.
So that was I think what I was mainly thinking about fall leaves, and I think your talk about ticks and also about this idea of like how people deal with them. I was thinking about that a lot.
Yeah. Well, now I feel a little guilty that we just had to blow our leaves because we're actually growing a front lawn. We're trying to grow a front lawn. So we just tore up our lawn and threw some topsoil on it, and then we had it aerated and overseeded for some attempt to get some kind of green grass for our young 6-month-old to hopefully walk across in the spring.
Which will that I definitely don't want the kid in the leaves where the ticks are either. Too. I think that is definitely something to avoid. Yeah. Karla, do you have any thoughts on fall and leaves or any other leaf and or fall and plant related topic?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I mean, I just wanted to emphasize that it is also important for species other than ticks
Yes.
to hide, but I think you covered that pretty well. And there's
The
this
baby's
little...
trying to grab the microphone. Okay. I do have one other interesting leaf-related fun fact and dazzling detail to share. One other thing. If you have a compost bin, apparently pound for pound, leaves contain twice the mineral content of manure. There's some funny picture that's apparently not for my consumption being showed. But yeah, they're very good. Like they're really useful. The Farmer's Almanac, they're really useful composting components. So it's a really great resource. And I think if you have the option, you can keep them and use them for gardening purposes instead of putting them. I think leaf management is something you got to do, but I think we should avoid putting them in plastic bags and sending them to the landfill. I think that is probably key.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I was doing a quick Google search because another story about leaves that's on topic here. So as new homeowners, Kendall and I have also become well acquainted with our local wildlife. So I mentioned that we have deer that go through our yard. We also have a fox. We're pretty sure a fox den is in our yard.
Oh.
And then our most recent addition has been a very fat, very cute groundhog.
We have a groundhog too.
And this groundhog is a chunky boy. And he loves to munch on the leaves. So I was doing a quick Google search to confirm that groundhogs do in fact eat leaves. So I think on the same theme of it being good for certain habitats, for animals, groundhogs are among those, and he loves to chomp on those leaves.
Groundhogs are such cool animals. We have one in our yard too. He's so funny. When I startle him and he runs away, it's hilarious. And one interesting thing about groundhogs is that they are 100% herbivores. So a fat groundhog, all he's eating is plants. And it's a lot of work to digest that much plant material and turn it into fat.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, how many leaves does this little guy have to eat to maintain his chunk?
Totally. And the other thing about groundhogs is that they are a true hibernator. So bears don't truly hibernate. They sleep through the winter, but they kind of get up and go. Groundhogs just conk out for 3 or 4 months. And so they have to get all that energy from only plants, and then they go in a hole, and then literally apparently you can poke one and they're just comatose for 3 months. Yeah.
Well, no wonder they've chosen our yard as their habitat, because there is obviously a plethora of leaves.
Yeah, that's really cute. I love those guys. They're good.
I wonder if he's also fertilizing your lawn with all of that digested plant matter.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. So hopefully that'll help Kendall's grass grow.
Other random groundhog fact that I happen to know, they're also known as woodchucks, but they don't have anything to do with wood or chucking.
Oh, interesting.
Huh.
It is apparently, I think the word woodchuck is, I think it's based on an Algonquin word that's woodchuck or something like that, and it just became woodchuck. But yeah, they have literally nothing to do with wood or chucking.
That's interesting. I guess I always assumed that a woodchuck was a separate animal.
Yeah, woodchucks and groundhogs are all the same.
Interesting.
And also, you could also accurately call them a marmot because they are in the genus Marmota. But most of the time when you think of marmots, you think of a European animal that's also in the same genus. But yeah.
Yeah, because when I first saw a marmot, I thought it looked like a bigger chipmunk.
Yeah, I think that the European marmots are a bit smaller than the American woodchuck, but they're in the same genus.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I think the Spanish word is marmota, right? Yeah, for woodchuck. Yeah. Anyway, okay. The last, if anyone else is going to jump in, but my last fall leaf related fun fact and dazzling detail has to do with, apparently in Japan there is a tradition of making tempura maple leaves, and they take a maple leaf and they batter it with like a sweet tempura batter and they fry it. And I guess the leaf doesn't really taste like much. It's more of just like a vessel for like the sweet batter, but it has that cool 5-leaf maple leaf shape.
Yeah, I was wondering really cool. If it like maintained its shape.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And there's
cool.
a bunch of there's another. I ended up with 2 Atlas Obscura articles. The one about rakes, and then this one about the fried leaves. But the one about the fried leaves. There's some people who say that this fried leaf tradition is like really ancient, but most people agree that it actually happened around the turn of the century in this town called, I think, Mimo or Maimo, Japan. Don't quote me on that, audience, I might be wrong. But they have a really famous like waterfall that has these really beautiful maple trees, and some genius guy decided to like make this tourist attraction food for all the tourists coming to see the falls. And so there's these fried maple leaves, and it's pretty common. And there's a bunch of different recipes. One of the recipes says you take the young leaves and they age them in salt for a year, and then they fry them. But some people say you can just take like the red ones from the tree and fry them too. So I might try that. We've got a silver maple in our yard. I might try some tempura maple leaves.
We have several Japanese maple trees, so we could also try this and let you know.
Yeah.
I wonder if they've done the combo of that with some maple syrup, because it sounds like that would also be a pretty good vessel for some maple syrup.
I think so. I think it is common now, even though maple syrup is traditionally a very American thing.
Of course.
But I wonder if I wonder the tradition of making syrup is based on like an indigenous American thing. But I wonder. I mean, it must be. I'm going to definitely try that. I've got some maple syrup. I'm going to do it. So anyway, that sounds like a fun way to eat the fall.
Eat the fall.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything to jump in, or should we just wrap it up? It sounds like a perfectly good way to end the show about eating the fall. So yeah, that's the special fall episode of this episode. Thank you to Karla and Tish and Kendall, and also our little daughter here who's trying to grab something off the table. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Welcome to the Bergtown Leaf Raking Championships!
The drama of the slatted broom, clearing away the colourful skein of autumn to make way for the frosty rime of winter. I love a good game of lawn harrowing, such a rustic and scrapey croquet.
So whether you decide to leave the leaves or you decide to rake them to get rid of habitats for ticks in your yard, I think we can all agree that we shouldn't be putting leaves in non-biodegradable bags anymore. Can we all agree on that? I think that's a great move. But yeah, the whole fall leaf thing's pretty complicated topic and a really fascinating conversation. So that's the end of this episode of Rootbound. Thank you for listening. My guests on this special fall episode of Rootbound were the Pollies, Tish and Kendall, and of course my wife Karla, and our little pumpkin. Rootbound is hosted by a guy who does not rake the leaves, Steve Ellington. Music by Christian Kriegeskota. Fake ads by David Lonnie. Rootbound is a podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside, but if you can go outside, gather some maple leaves and then go fry them up. That sounds actually like pretty good.
There's no autumn leaves without deciduous trees. I feel like that could be something, but no.